Hello and welcome to Planet Pulse on Firstpost. The Earth is constantly changing, and in recent years, for the worse. Summers are getting hotter and winters harsher. Rising sea levels, floods, drought, wildfires, and torrential rain have been disrupting lives across continents. The fight against climate change is needed now more than ever. On the show, we bring you all the top stories on the climate crisis, its causes, its brutal effects, and the warriors helping to fight the menace. The Trump administration has launched a relentless assault on environmental protections. Now, in a single day, the EPA unleashed a storm of rollbacks, gutting 31 regulations designed to keep air and water clean. At the core of this crusade is a plan to erase the 2009 endangerment finding, the legal backbone of US climate policy. If successful, pollution could flood the skies unchecked, and industries would get free rein. While President Trump promises economic gains, experts warn of a disastrous outcome: raging storms, poisoned rivers, and a world dragged backward. And now, even though legal battles loom, the damage may already be done. Our next report dives into the consequences of this sweeping deregulation.
Withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty.
Trump struck with ruthless precision. In a single day, his administration dismantled at least 31 environmental protections. And the United States environmental defenses crumbled under the weight of deregulation. At the heart of this destruction lies a single decision, a decision by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It demands the erasure of the 2009 endangerment finding. This ruling labeled greenhouse gases a threat to health. It was the backbone of U.S. climate policy, and without it, pollution could flood the skies unchecked. EPA Chief Lee Zeldin sharpened the blade. He called climate rules a chokehold on American industry. And, very swiftly, his agency slashed emission limits on power plants.
EPA will be reconsidering many suffocating rules that restrict nearly every sector of our economy and cost Americans trillions of dollars, as the EPA does its part to usher in the golden age of American success. Our actions will lower the cost of living by making it more affordable to purchase a car, heat your home, and operate a business.
The consequences of this deregulation will be swift and brutal. Scientists warn of economic devastation. And the low-income and minority communities are likely to suffer first and worst.
In the previous administration, under the Biden administration, billions of dollars were provided to work towards zero air emissions. But the clear intent seems to be to move away from electrification, and that would imply, that will mean for the millions of people that live around the ports and downwind of the ports, poor air quality, more health effects, and a much more dreary and concerning outlook in terms of their public health.
Even though Trump's team promises an economic boom, the facts tell another story. Rolling back progress could drag America into the past.
My biggest worry is that our air and water will not be clean, that particularly communities who are poor will not be able to trust what comes out of their taps and the air that they're breathing, that businesses who are polluting will not be held to account, and that they'll be able to make the air and the soil and the water worse.
The world watches as America pivots backward. Trump already pulled out of the Paris Agreement. Now his administration pushes fossil fuels into overdrive. While energy companies cheer, environmentalists sound the alarm. They say climate disasters will not wait for political games. Hurricanes will come. Heat waves will scorch. droughts will strangle crops, and the damage will not discriminate between red and blue states.
When there's no one to keep our food, air, and water quality safe and clean, real people will get sick. When there's no one watching and alerting us to hurricanes, wildfires, and other extreme weather and climate impacts, people will die.
Legal battles, however, are brewing in the distance. Environmental groups sharpen their swords for the fight ahead. Courts have blocked Trump's rollbacks before, and they could do it again. But the clock is ticking. Federal judges will decide if science or politics prevails. If the courts fail, pollution could be locked in for generations.
Creationists, anti-vaxxers, climate science deniers, we have taken them on. And while these fights continue, we've made a lot of progress. We made a lot of progress, but only when we take action. Action in the courts, action in the streets, actions online.
Even as chaos unfolds, hope flickers. Renewable energy continues its quiet march forward. Solar led new energy capacity in 2024. States push clean energy policies despite federal sabotage, and private investments in green technology surge. But the storm is not done raging. More cuts are coming. The Energy Dominance Council plans to shred even more regulations. Federal grants for climate programs hang in limbo, and Trump's team is racing to dismantle decades of progress. The battle for America's future is underway. Will science and the courts hold the line, or will pollution and politics reign supreme?
Deep in the Amazon, where air once hummed with birdsong and the scent of rain-soaked earth, there is now only the growl of bulldozers and the sting of diesel fumes. Families who have lived off the land for generations watch helplessly as their homes, livelihoods, and futures are reduced to piles of felled trees. All to build a highway for world leaders arriving to talk about saving the planet for the November COP30. Here's our report.
Nothing says saving the planet quite like bulldozing tens of thousands of acres of pristine Amazon rainforest. This in a bid to build a shiny new 4-lane highway, all in preparation for a climate summit. As world leaders prepare to gather in Brazil's Belém this November for COP30, a global conference on climate action, a massive stretch of protected rainforest is being cleared. This is to make way for Avenida Liberdade, or the Avenue of Liberty. But liberty for whom exactly? Certainly not for the wildlife, indigenous communities, or the fragile ecosystem that once thrived here. The irony is almost too much to bear. The Amazon, often called the lungs of the earth, plays a crucial role in absorbing carbon dioxide and regulating the planet's climate. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, chainsaws, bulldozers, and diesel-powered excavators are carving through the very forest these leaders claim to protect. The sound of rustling leaves and exotic bird song has been replaced by the relentless roar of heavy machinery. Once a thriving part of the rainforest, the land now resembles a war zone. Logs stacked like corpses, wetlands paved over, wildlife fleeing in all directions. For the locals, the construction of this highway is a personal catastrophe. They say everything has been destroyed. Many lost their primary source of income, and what's worse is that no one was given any compensation. The lush land that once supported generations has been reduced to a soulless stretch of asphalt, and this is only the beginning. Displacement isn't just a possibility, it's practically a guarantee. The highway won't even connect with the local communities. Instead, its towering walls will cut them off entirely, serving only the endless stream of trucks that will soon thunder through what was once untouched rainforest. It's not just human lives being uprooted. The Amazon is home to over 10% of the world's known species, many of which will not survive the destruction. Local veterinarians who help animals injured by human activity are seeing the impact firsthand. Rehab centers are worried about where the animals will go once they're healed. Land animals will no longer be able to cross to the other side of the forest. Their habitats will shrink. Their breeding grounds will disappear. For the jaguars, sloths, and countless other species that have called this forest home for centuries, this new highway might as well be a death sentence. The Brazilian president proudly proclaims that COP30 will be a COP in the Amazon and a COP about the Amazon. But if this summit is meant to protect the rainforest, why is it destroying it in the process?
There are 13 kilometers of deforestation. The fauna is suffering. We find dead animals, the loss of crossings. We even find jaguars approaching the territory. The Igarape that Avenida Liberdade crossed. Many fish died. The water became very muddy. There are countless environmental impacts.
Officials insist the highway will be sustainable. They are pointing to features like wildlife crossings, bike lanes, and solar-powered lighting.
Clarification note about Liberdade Avenue. The construction of Liberdade Avenue does not involve the removal of residents and is not part of the package of federal and state investments for COP30. The avenue is a project started in 2020, even before Belém was chosen as the host of the COP, and is being built in an area that has been inhabited for quite some time, through which a power line passes. The route follows exactly the strip where the vegetation was previously suppressed.
And it's not just the road. Belém is undergoing a massive infrastructure overhaul to prepare for the summit. An $81 million airport expansion to accommodate millions of extra passengers. New hotels and port renovations to welcome a flood of visitors. A massive city park with restaurants and sports complexes. All for an event meant to combat climate change. The destruction of the Amazon for a climate summit isn't just a cruel irony. It's a damning indictment of the performative nature of global climate policies. When the summit ends and the world leaders fly home in private jets, what will remain? A devastated rainforest, displaced communities, and an empty promise of sustainability.
The West African nation of Nigeria relies heavily on its oil and gas sector. However, this trade comes with a hefty environmental cost. The oil spills often strip the local Nigerian communities of their right to a clean habitat. It pollutes their land and water bodies, while their struggle continues with a prolonged legal battle to save their homes and the planet. Our next report gets you more on the story.
Nigeria, a country full of dense rainforests on the surface and massive oil reserves beneath. The Nigerian economy relies heavily on its oil and gas, which contributes a large portion to the country's budget and GDP. But the oil trade comes at a cost. It often leads to vast environmental destruction. The extraction and transportation of oil cause it to spill. Soil drenched in oil, water bodies covered with oil bubbles are a common sight in southern Nigeria's Niger Delta region. And the cause is often a poorly maintained pipeline that cracks up, or sabotaged lines to steal oil, or an overflowing saver pit. The reasons could be many, but the end sufferers remain the local communities. The damage from these spills strips the locals of their livelihood, forces them to leave their houses, and impacts their health. But it's not just the pain of losing their homes that hounds them, it's also a long legal battle for justice that follows. Nigeria's Ogale and Bile communities are among such sufferers. They lost their livelihood because of a multinational's negligence. These communities sued multinational oil and gas company Shell and its Nigerian subsidiary SPDC. This was for decades of exploitation they faced due to oil spills and subsequent environmental damage. The Ogale community is seeking justice against at least 40 oil spills since 1989 that have severely contaminated their land and waterways, while the Bile, a riverine community of around 45 islands, witnessed massive oil spills between 2011 and 2013.
Our crops is not coming out. We don't have drinking water mostly. The underground water is seriously affected. Even when you dug a borehole now, you can't get a good water to drink in the whole of Ogale. So right now we don't have good source of drinking water in Ogale. No crops coming out, as you can see. The spillage has spoiled to the land that we cannot be able to produce cassava again, which is our source of living.
These two communities are now fighting Shell in the London High Court. A 4-week preliminary issues trial concluded on March 7th. This was to determine the legal issues involved in the case. It will be furthered by a full trial next year to assess whether Shell is liable or not.
These people have been incredibly persistent and determined. They've waited 10 years for this trial to start. They've experienced decades of accumulated contamination of their land. These people are determined to have justice. They're determined that Shell should be held accountable, that they should clean up their pollution, and that they should receive compensation.
No clean up, no justice. No clean up, no justice.
While the hearing was underway, demonstrators gathered outside the London High Court to protest against the environmental pollution caused by Shell. A similar protest was carried out by hundreds of indigenes of Ogale community in Nigeria's River State as well.
The oil spillage, the gas well in the region is the one that destroyed our soil. And for this reason, we come together today in a very peaceful manner, in a very non-violent manner, and demand our justice. Ogale need justice. Shell must pay. Shell must pay.
Shell has so far denied these charges. It says the vast majority of spills were caused by illegal third-party interference like pipeline sabotage and theft, which is rife in the Niger Delta. The company says it has no obligation to compensate the people living in the areas where spills were caused by the malicious acts of third parties.
Right now, they are taking us from courthouses to courthouses, spending billions of pounds just to stay away from being responsible for the atrocities that they have caused us. That's sad. So I'm appealing to the conscience of the owners of Royal Dutch Shell. That money is blood money.
The multinationals continue their blame game in the courtrooms for years, while their operations violate the local Nigerian community's rights to a clean environment by polluting it. And their greed bleeds our planet Earth.
And that's it on Planet Pulse for today. We will see you again at the same time next week. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
Do you think that Ukraine is at its weakest position?
This war is not about Ukraine.
Do you believe that your president was insulted? Yes or no question. Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Diplomacy will work?
Yes,
Do you think
will.
Russia will give up the territory if there is no ceasefire? Do you propose to keep fighting?
We are ready to resist.
Do you think there will be peace?
Many countries gave us 3 days.
President Trump said you don't have any cards.
We do not have another choice.
How do you keep fighting?
You ask me once again the same question.
Because you've not answered my question.
We have enough capacities to keep fighting.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Lakshman.
Good afternoon.
Making headlines in India well before you landed here.
New Delhi has raised concerns in the recent past vis-a-vis the Khalistani separatists that operate in New Zealand. How do you propose to address these concerns?
In our democracy, we believe in the freedom of speech.
Organizations like the Al-Qaeda or ISIS were to hold a referendum in New Zealand, something related to one of your Western partners. Would you say the same?
We have very well-defined laws in our democracy.
No specific conversation on Khalistan on this visit.
It was raised with me. I also raised back our position.
Are you willing to be open to these concerns from New Delhi?
As I keep coming back to you to say, we have strong laws in our system.